Hey everybody, this is Jen Kleinhens.
And I'm Rob Vose.
And you're listening to another episode of Everybody Hates Your Brand, a podcast where we talk about our thoughts and opinions on marketing, from customer experience to brand, and everything in between. Join us today as we talk agency life, going solo as a consultant, and startups with a very special guest.
So yes, as Jen said, it's our third special guest on the podcast, and a very exciting and interesting one, a woman called Simone Blakers, who used to be my boss a long time ago in Australia, but has run many marketing agencies, is currently a marketing consultant, and is actually launching a startup, and we thought she'd be a fascinating guest. You will probably only hear my voice and Simone's voice during the interview for reasons the same one we had with Lucy Atchison in the last one. We have some technical issues.
Yes, technical issues with
which we
our setup.
are close to resolving.
Yes.
But we didn't quite get solved in time. And because Simone, as I say, hired me, and I've known Simone for a while, I was the one who took the interview. Hopefully, next one we do, we'll make sure that we're both there. Hope you enjoy it. So yeah, we have a third special guest this week, and this special guest had a huge impact on my career. For some reason, decided that I would be worth a good bet to bring over from the UK to Australia to come and work at DDB in Australia, and for which I'm eternally grateful. Let me introduce Simone Blakers. Simone, welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Nice.
It's a pleasure to have you here. So what we've done historically with interviews is kind of said bit of background into you and who you are and your career, kind of credibility type thing. So would you mind just giving a quick sort of summary of your career to date, which I appreciate is pretty difficult in a short period of time?
Well, are you implying that it's been a long time is why it's going to be...
I wouldn't dream of saying that, Simone. No, good Lord.
So, yes, well, my name's Simone Blakers. I'm a customer experience consultant by day and a startup entrepreneur by night, I guess.
I like it. The double life. I like it.
So my background, I've spent about 26 years or more working in creative and media agencies and had the great opportunity to lead many agencies in Australia and Europe. And I guess my quick career summary is that I started my career before the internet was accessible. So I had the wonderful opportunity of following the rise of digital marketing, social media, and of course, data-driven marketing. It started all as direct marketing and has evolved to where we are now with lots of data-driven advertising.
The good old days of paper and postage and print and all that.
Direct mail, all of that. Faxes. There was a lot of fax marketing.
Faxes.
Yeah.
I don't see. We're not wildly different in age, really. But I just missed a bit of the old fax marketing. That never was a thing for me. That I feel cheated.
You feel cheated. You missed it. You missed the moment.
Yeah.
Because there's been a lot of change, if you think about how
good grief,
changed over that time. We used to send out CD-ROMs.
Cool. Well, and you kind of then have sort of transitioned relatively recently, haven't you?
Yeah, so about
into your dual life that you're currently living.
I took the opportunity of a redundancy, which was a wonderful blessing, to just go solo and really think about what my future direction was going to be outside of agency world. So, yeah, we'll chat about that as well.
Well, we are going to cover lots of that, because what we're going to do is talk about sort of three distinct elements and try and take advantage of Simone's not too long experience, just right. We're going to talk a little bit about agency life. We're going to talk a little bit about sort of practicalities, your day job, as you described it, and then we'll finish off with your alter ego of startups and the world of startups and what you're experiencing there. When we were bouncing notes backwards and forwards, it was quite interesting because we were talking about what we would want to discuss and how we would use your experience and talk about it. And one of the things that's fascinating me at the moment is the future of agencies. Now, that's a kind of agencies is a broad topic. There's lots of different types of agencies, but this idea that, to me, it seems like one of the ways that agencies are now talking about surviving is about getting clients to pay for thinking rather than production, which has historically been the model, really, and thinking has been kind of baked into the to the cost or the hours of that production. And I'm kind of interested in whether that is possible. Is that the future of where you see kind of the agency relationship going? Like, what are the changes that you've seen, and where do you see that kind of model going?
I think the model is changing a lot because agencies, the margin isn't there anymore. They're really struggling to survive. And by agencies, I'm talking, creative and media agencies. That margin pressure is there for all of them. We're seeing, I would observe that there's internal agencies. There's probably a big shift where you see a lot of the big global brands and tech brands, they have their own creative directors in-house. They sometimes have their own media buying in-house as well.
Yeah.
So internal agencies is a big shift. The other one is virtual agencies. So with that shift of how advertising and marketing has changed over time comes this real demand for diversity of skill set. And that diversity is not a cost that agencies can hold. You can't have all these different skill sets on the books all the time. So this concept of virtual agencies is certainly on the rise. And as you said, probably the third thing is that democratization of production. It was the place where a lot of money was made, but now things are more automated. There's self-service platforms. You've got things flash talking where you can actually build dynamic ads. You don't need to have HTML5 coding ability. You can actually build it on the fly using this software like Canva for design, or
Yes.
HubSpot for emails, or Shopify for like e-commerce. You get the templates and themes. You don't need to pay for an agency anymore for that production element.
No, it's kind of it's which leaves agencies in a difficult spot, doesn't it? Because outside of the big kind of broadcast media stuff, and everyone says TV is dying, and it is, but it's still a big medium, in lots of ways. And I guess cinema, when the world returns to some sense of normalcy, those big things still require specific skills and big production. I guess a big idea, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But if you're in the things that you're talking about, absolutely. I remember we used flash talking, or talked to flash talking when we were at DDB, didn't we?
Yeah.
And it was like a spreadsheet and some assets, and depending on what customer and what you kind of, it figures it out based on what combination of assets and the placement of the ad and all that sort of stuff, didn't it? Which was kind of extraordinary.
That was kind of before. Their platform is very evolved these days, as are many of the ad serving platforms that allow for dynamic creative ability. But you can literally create these templates on the fly. You can pull in using data-driven feeds from weather or from, other systems that you've got your own data. You can actually change the ads on the fly, and as you do emails and all those things. So it's a very different world as to what it was, and the way that agencies used to make their money has changed. Back in the good old days when long lunches existed and they were a thing, that was the days when lazy money was there, like, media markups, creative production.
Oh, yeah.
That's how agencies made their money. But unfortunately, during that time and that era, agencies got into a bad habit of throwing in their free senior research for free, and their strategy for free, and their concepts for free. As you said, like, you still need the creative ideas, you still need creativity, but if it's being thrown in for free, it's hard to actually justify the costs all of a sudden.
It's hard then to reverse it out, isn't it? It's hard then to say to somebody who's a client who's been anchored around a certain price based on production and thinking combined, to then say, well, no, you need to pay us for the thinking as well.
Well,
That's
right.
a really to rip that out, that doesn't. If I was, obviously I've been in client most of my career, I'd be like, well, hang on, no, I was getting that as part of the deal.
But we were getting it as part of the bill because it was being funded elsewhere.
Yes.
And when we think about, and I know in some of your other podcast sessions with Jen, we've talked about what good agencies bring to the table, like those fresh eyes and a broad perspective, creativity and that system thinking. But the reality is that agencies have to learn to charge for that, and it takes time to shift a whole industry.
Well, and especially when the other thing that we haven't talked about, which has sort of started happening over the last few years, is big consulting firms coming in and stealing, or pressuring some of that quote unquote thinking market. We've seen a lot of consultancies buy creative agencies,
Really?
And the idea that they've built an industry on being paid for thinking, essentially, and at a grander level than just marketing, quote unquote. Those people have C-suite connections, and we know the marketing influence in boardrooms has dwindled over time. So all of a sudden, you've got all these people with all this credibility wandering in going, we can do that, but we can also do all this other stuff as well.
Yeah, that's right. And if I think about that shift for a creative agency to actually be able to charge for their thinking and their strategy versus the difference with those consulting groups, and even myself as a consultant, right, or innovation agencies, they're the other ones. They've cracked it. Because what happens is that they do proactive selling. So instead of responsive pitching, where they're having to respond to a brief and they're having to give their ideas for free on the table, what they do is they actually go in with a methodology, and the client is willing to pay for the consultant to facilitate the process. They pay for the method, not just the output.
Yeah, that's an interesting. Yeah, they're paying for the actual process itself. Yeah, that's interesting, because that, and we've talked about, and on this podcast we've talked about pitching, and as I'm sure you know, having worked on a couple of pitches together, I was never the biggest fan of pitching, but that whole reactive pitch thing.
Yes,
you're right that other people do it differently because they're bringing in a process, and that's the way they've been doing it for years. People have been talking about. I remember when you sent your notes to me, you said, well, this is kind of old pitches. The problem of pitches is old news, and you're absolutely right. It kind of feels like everyone knows the problem, but nothing changes. So there's something what is it that's stopping pitches becoming more, I don't know, collaborative or about chemistry or whatever it is? Do we think it's this idea that, what we've been talking about, that actually the client's thinking, well, I can do the strategy stuff, or I can do it, or I can get somebody else to do it. And actually, I just want my agency to be the production house that churns stuff out the other end. So actually, I am going to pitch because I want the cost to be the primary motivator.
I think for better or worse, right, what we've seen is this rise of procurement, the rise of the pitch doctor, the rise of the agency relationship manager. And to be fair, that's born out of clients seeking value. Let's go back to the day again where we're having long lunches and both the client and the agency enjoy the fact that the TV commercial could really only be shot in Hawaii. This is real, It's real. So we understand that those checks and balances have to be in place. Yes, we still need the cost checks. We still need the disaster recovery plans and the insurances and the technical infrastructures and all of those things. But outside of that, every marketer you talk to, I guarantee you, will actually say that it's more about whether or not they can work with the people.
Yes.
It's a service business. Ultimately.
Oh, absolutely.
And absolutely. I think that the procurement process, if the best agency relationships are built off mutual respect, understanding, and trust, and that's when the magic happens, right? When those things are there. They're not transactional things that can be ticked off in a procurement spreadsheet. So how do you fit that into the process?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I remember talking to somebody at one of our old clients. I'll tell you who after the podcast. And he said, if I want strategic thinking and I want something new, it's something big, I need some help, I come to you. Not me specifically, but your agency, because you're good at that. If I just want something churned out quickly, I go to X because they will just do what I want quickly. They're not looking to interrogate the brief or challenge it or find the creative angle or whatever it is. I just want this, go and do that, like an execution only thing. And a big agency like the one we were at can't react to that and that cost as quickly either, I think. So I think there's an interesting question of, if you're a big agency, a big, you're a DDB or you're a M&C or whatever, those kind of things, what's the future for them? Is it this pay for thinking thing or like, where do they go? I mean, there's obviously a lot of those brands are doing very well, but I'm struggling to see where they go and what changes there, if I'm honest, like what the future of that kind of full service big agency is in 10, 15 years time.
Yeah, I think that is a reason why I exited Stage Left.
Yeah.
Because
you can see the writing on the wall.
Yeah, and I mean, they do have to change, and I'm sure they will find ways out of it. But think about the holding companies. Their way out of it is to, yes, merge with the consulting groups, to buy up innovation agencies, to, basically diversify out of that traditional model because they know that that's not where the future is going to lie.
Well, you segued us nicely there into a sort of second section of this podcast, which is talking about life after agency and going alone and consulting and building something. So you said the sort of driver for that or the catalyst for that was a redundancy and but you probably still had the option then of trying to find another job.
Yeah, no, I knew I didn't want to do that.
Versus not. So what was it that kicked in your head that went, do you know what, I'm not going to do that now. I'm going to, because you've got contacts coming out of the kazoo, so you're at kazoo. So what was it that made you go, do you know what, I'm going to do something on my own here?
I think it had been something that certainly my husband and I had been discussing for some time. Like, for me, I didn't aspire to be part of those global politics. Frankly, no. I just don't have the patience for it.
It's one of the very many things I like about working with you.
That I don't like politics.
No, because you're like me, I can't be bothered either.
I don't like wasting time. I think that there's so many things in the world where great minds and great people can collaborate to have great impact, and to waste it on politics like that, it was not inspiring to me at all. So, I knew that it wasn't going to be the next step for me. And particularly when you find yourself in board meetings most of the time and away from thinking and the work and the problem solving.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to build more flexibility into how I structured my time, how I structured my tax. In a different way.
Fair enough.
And, I could see the agency burnout, as we said, due to that margin squeeze.
Yeah.
So I knew it had to be something different. And consulting was a very quick and natural step for me. Like I was hitting the pavement from day one. It was great to segue that whilst I then thought about building my own startup business.
Yeah. So you started Liquid CX, which we'll leave a link to in the show notes. And we had a quick talk about what, because it's something, to be sort of blunt, in the situation that I'm in currently, which is, finished a contract at the end of April in the middle of lockdown. Obviously, job market's a bit difficult, so looking to try and build something myself, hopefully. I'm obviously really interested. I'm sure a lot of people are thinking about that route at the moment, given the situation. So what have been the kind of the biggest sort of challenges, changes you've found as you've gone through the process? What are the things that have kind of gone, Christ, I wasn't expecting that?
Well, I think firstly, what I hoped for and am pleased to say is that there is a really strong gig economy out there. That it's talked about, we talk about virtual agencies and things like that. Businesses do need help, and they
Mm-hmm.
need people that they can bring in and don't have to have on the books. So there is a very strong gig economy and demand out there. So, for people that are thinking about that, I think that you can have confidence in that. What I think were some of the challenges for me were, I'm not a natural salesperson. That's not my
Mm.
strength. It's not how I operate. It's not who I am. So leveraging my network and asking for work was something that was probably one of the big fears and hurdles that I wanted to try and figure out how to overcome. But
Mm.
the reality is, if I just had to shift my perception, and when you've spent a career building a reputation and you've spent a career building skills, you've just got to trust that those things are
Mm.
actually going to serve you well. And the opportunity to think, well, the work doesn't just land in your lap. Like, you've got to
No.
put yourself out there. You've got to
Mm.
go knocking on doors. You've got to go having coffees. You've got to go meeting with people. But businesses, they do want that help. And once you start a conversation about what's going on in your world, what's going on in your business, usually that turns into an opportunity that you can help them.
And did you, because how to phrase this question, when you started going solo, did you launch Liquid CX before as a brand vehicle for that to generate work, or did you have work and then parlay that into Liquid CX? You know what I mean? So, like, is it easier to kind of say, "Oh, I've managed to get a consulting gig for whatever, or some work from X, Y, and Z, and now I've got some credibility because I can then go, okay, well, I'm working with these people. Here's what I've done. Here's some other stuff, etc., etc." Or did you launch Liquid CX first before you got your
I,
first gig? Do you know what I mean?
yeah, no, I launched Liquid CX straight away.
Right.
And the reason for that was just that you kind of need a conversation to have. So when you're knocking on doors, you need to be able to leave a business card. You need to
Mm.
have an email address. You need to be able to follow up. The fact that I hadn't done any consulting on my own, it didn't matter because, you know, I've got a whole career behind me of that kind of
Yeah.
strategic advice and working with clients in many different categories and industries. And
Mm-hmm.
so, that was all there. And
Mm.
it doesn't matter that that's not something that's been done under the Liquid CX brand. That's fine. So
Yeah.
it was really just a way for me to, house it all rather than feeling that I was setting anything up. Like, it was just, something on a business card, something to talk to people
Yeah.
about,
Yeah. Yeah.
a way to
Rather
have
than just
conversations.
rather than and don't this isn't meant this is come out wrong. Rather than just Simone Blakers, do you know what I mean? You've actually got a sort of almost like a vehicle that's on
Yeah,
top of that in a sense. Yeah.
yeah, it felt
And
felt like, Simone Blakers at gmail.com
mm,
was not going to
yeah.
be the level I wanted, because, like, I'm going into
Yeah.
big
Yeah, you're going
businesses.
in quite high up, aren't you? Yeah.
And so, just using a Gmail and things like that wasn't really going to cut it. You have to have a perspective. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. And you mentioned when we were sort of discussing what we were talking about in this podcast about the sort of length of time it takes for things to come down the pipe.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
terms of like stuff. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like how long, what your experience has been there?
Yeah, like, you'll go and have 10 coffees, 10 conversations, and probably
Hmm.
convert one out of that fairly quickly. But then what I found is that people call, like, a year later, I'll get a call from someone. Now, remember when we had that conversation, I've taken that back into the business. I've circulated it, and now finally got approval to move forward. And I'll be like, I cannot remember what on earth we were talking about. Like that was a year ago, but it happened.
Outwardly, you're like, yeah, great, that's great.
Yeah. So you've got to sow a lot of seeds in order for them to grow, and it does. I think probably in hindsight, if I think about the things that I could have done differently for that first year, I said yes to everything. So people ask me, "Oh, could you do this?" Yep, I can do that. Could you do this? Yep, I could do that for you too. I could even, and it was just a confidence thing because you don't know where the next paycheck's coming from.
No.
So it was just for that first year, I probably took on way too much. And then started to get the confidence to say, hey, increase my rates, decrease my hours, and start to balance that out. And I had a great piece of advice. Somebody said to me, because the other thing is that consultants, you do network together, you support each other.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't do a piece of work, you throw it to someone else. So don't see them as competitors. See them as your extended team.
Yeah, like a network. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of them said to me, "You've got to remember that they aren't paying you for the hour it takes you to do the work. They're paying you for the years and years and years it took you to learn how to do that." And I was like, oh, that's such good advice,
Absolutely. And I think your point about saying no to things, I think one of the things that people always talk about strategically, what's our strategy, what's our, what do we do strategically? Well, the answer is not in what you do, it's in what you say no to.
So true. Yeah.
The strategy is defined by saying no to things more than it is by saying yes to things. So that's really interesting to have that kind of confidence. And then obviously you said that's your sort of day job by night. You are a startup entrepreneur. Do you want to kind of explain what you're currently working on?
Yeah, so my husband and I have founded a business called Fur Bubba.
Mm-hmm.
Our mission is to help create better fur parents. So we're talking dogs and cats.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot out there for human parenting, but there is a huge rise for the demand of supporting our lovely fur parents. So
absolutely.
Basically, our approach is we're developing products that are best for pet, best for parent, and best for planet. And that sustainability angle is really key to us, to what I feel that I want to contribute to the world.
And was the impetus behind starting it that this is the thing that carries you forward through the rest of your life? Was it, what was the thing? What was it that really drove you to start it? Given that you're obviously successful in your career and you're successful with Liquid CX, what was the angle here?
We were a little bit strategic about it because we wanted to create a business that wasn't going to restrict or wasn't going to be restricted by the time we could put in. So consulting, you've only got a certain amount of hours in a day and you're capped by the amount of time you can put into something. So, that wasn't going to set us up for retirement. So we looked at different categories, and certainly the pet category is a category that is in global growth. It's a category that is going through a complete premiumization in terms of how people have
that has got to be a made-up word.
Humanization.
Premium. I thought you said premiumization.
I was like, well, maybe, yeah. Did I say? I probably did. I like to make it.
I don't know. That's amazing. I'm using that. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I've just never heard of premiumization before. I love that. Okay, sorry. Yes, carry on.
Well, yeah, people are paying more for shit.
Yes.
Basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, because they treat their children as their children. Yeah. It's that's what it is. So we wanted to identify a category that was in growth, but also something that we would enjoy and something we felt we could put some good back into the world with and use our skills in as well. So
Yeah.
it was quite a strategic decision around which business to move forward. We had a few different ideas, and this was the one that we really feel passionate about.
Well, it's funny. I mean, I've spent 6 months consulting at or contracted at Vets for Pets in the UK, which is obviously part of the Pets at Home group. And I think one of the other, yes, it's in growth, but I also think in downturns, it's pretty well protected. You know, pets and looking after your pets, and especially, it seems to be something that is an evergreen, always going to be there as well, which I think is a really smart thing to be going after.
Yeah, better that than the airline business right now.
Just yeah, you're not wrong. You're absolutely not wrong. So what are the kind of sort of, we've talked about the products you're developing. What are the sort of things you're looking at or are producing? So what's on the kind of slate, or is that top secret and under NDA?
No, not at all. Actually, I think we're just about to talk about how we take a bit more of a Kickstarter mindset and involve our social media community in the product development, because I think that would be really key. So the first product we're working on is in the pet bedding space. And if you look at the amount of waste that is generated in dog beds, particularly, it's unbelievable. They're designed to fall apart. They're fast fashion in the pet world, you
Okay.
know. So there's a huge wastage. We have some insight that tells us that they're beside food, they're the biggest selling products, and we really think that there's an opportunity to bring some innovation to that, and also bring eco credentials. There's nothing globally in the market with eco credentials at the moment. So, but it's hard, it's taken a lot longer, because we could have just gone to China and just bought
Yes.
some off the shelf.
Yeah.
But it's a much harder thing to be true to your vision and to actually create sustainable solutions. It's 1,000 times harder.
You're the Patagonia of pet beds. That kind of interview.
If we could be the Patagonia of pet products, that would be a dream.
Well, it's interesting. You talked about collaborating with your social audience in terms of the design of these products and stuff. There is an interesting brand called Chapman Guitars in the UK. I'll tell you why I'm telling you this is because they build their guitars, or a lot of their guitars, in a collaborative fashion. So they will say to their audience, we're going to build a new guitar. We want your help in picking what wood we make it out of, what shape it is, what pickups we put in it, what the neck is, what the tuners, like the whole
How awesome.
kit caboodle. And they give sort of 3 options for each. So, they were introducing, a few years ago, they introduced if you know your guitar's a flying V. And, okay, what type of flying V does it look like? Again, is it swamp ash? Is it mahogany? All this stuff. And it might be an interesting one for you to look at. It's a fascinating brand. I think that idea of collaborating and co-collaborating with your audience, because all of a sudden then they're bought into the process, and they have feel more of a sense of ownership, I suppose.
Absolutely. I'll definitely look them up, because it is that, I think the days have gone of pushing products at consumers. And consumers, particularly with such big social shifts like COVID and what's been going on in the world, we actually see, and the economic pressures, we actually see the rise of more purposeful purchasing. And that trend is something that we want to be part of.
And I think we did a podcast about purpose, and I think our conclusion was that you can't communicate your way out of a problem you behaved your way into. But if you start with purpose and your brand is built around purpose, then it's great because it's authentic, which is exactly kind of where you're going. If you were big brand and you had not cared about it, and then all of a sudden you start trying to be purpose-led, it just looks daft, I think. It just looks inauthentic. But if you're starting from a position of authenticity, which sounds like you are, then I think it's you're absolutely right. You're kind of tapping into that zeitgeist, I suppose.
Yeah, and that's the aim, but it is hard.
Yes.
It's amazing how much harder it is. And perhaps it's because we're still small and we're a startup. It's hard to source certain fabrics and source things, and you've still got to do a lot of research to really find what's going to be the right solution, find the right partners. And people say that they're going to do things in a certain way, and then, it doesn't really happen. Certain countries have different ethics and different ways of manufacturing. So it's quite the journey that we're on. And I think it would be good, as you say, to welcome the community that we've got into that journey with us.
Absolutely. And so, talking about that community, where can people find Fur Bubba at the moment?
You can check us out on Instagram or on Facebook. We've got a number of people that we should do shout outs of our Fur Bubbas of the week, and people.
I know I'm a follower. I have to say,
little Molly.
We'll try and get our dog Molly on there at some point. Absolutely.
Yes.
And the dog bed thing is interesting. I remember we first got Molly, and we bought a dog bed, an expensive dog bed, and she didn't sleep on it for nearly 18 months. And it's only when we put it in front of the window where she can sit and bark at people that she actually uses it. So hopefully maybe a different bed would have helped. Well, look, we've been talking for a while, and probably a good spot to wrap it up. I just want to say thank you very much for spending your time, for coming on. I appreciate, obviously, time differences with Australia are always fun, but greatly appreciate you coming on the podcast. Thank you for your time.
Easy. Thanks for having me. Lovely to chat.
So that's it for this episode of Everybody Hates Your Brand. We hope you enjoyed it. You can find show notes, resources, and more episodes on our website, everybodyhatesyourbrand.com. But before we go, let's leave on a positive note and share what we're loving right now. So, Rob, what do you got this week?
Well, I wrote an article a few weeks ago about personalization, and it was an example from Sony PlayStation, really relevant given the PlayStation 5 is about to launch or has launched. And it was about how they came so close to getting it right. And what are the kind of key things to do when it comes to personalization. And I've been really kind of reading up around this area recently, and there's an interesting article in Marketing Week by a chap called Ben Davis, where he talks about his experience of going on holiday, and how, again, doing personalization and getting it wrong is potentially more damaging than not doing it at all. So they turned up at a hotel, they were there just one night, and they got to their room, and there was a large silver sash saying happy birthday, and there was an ice bucket with 2 glasses and a bottle of Prosecco that had been drunk.
What?
With a card with their names in it saying, "Dear Ben and Eloise, have a great day, we hope you enjoy your stay." But it wasn't their birthday, and they hadn't. So I thought it was quite an interesting example.
Who drank the Prosecco? I
doesn't
really
say.
answers.
The person said, I still don't know if the staff had misread one of our dates of birth and a fellow guest had down a Prosecco, or if the previous occupant of our room was celebrating a birthday and housekeeping had got confused and left the empty bottle and banner but written a new card. But this idea that, and they'd been driving for ages, they had a grumpy toddler with them, they had they were exhausted. But it's a really interesting example, I think, of getting personalisation wrong and how dangerous it is.
I feel like if the Prosecco bottle had been full, this would
they
have been
might have been all right with it, yeah. But it's just a really interesting example. His kind of his argument is, and I think there's some merit to this, that personalisation, get everything right, and then do the personalisation bit on top. Mm-hmm. There's an interesting quote here from e-consultancy founder Ashley Friedline, possibly. Great waiting staff, great landlords, landladies, or the famous village shopkeeper don't actually need to know who you are to give you personal attention and cater to your needs. They just need to kind of look at you as an individual, and so maybe you look like you're lost, or maybe you this or the other.
Right.
So I'm a big believer in personalisation, but I just think it's an interesting time. People get it wrong, I think, a lot. And I think they don't necessarily think about the damage that they're causing, and they don't necessarily think about the signal that they're receiving from the customer, what that could have multiple meanings, not just the one, and they kind of focus on the one that they think it is.
Yeah.
It's just an interesting kind of place when you start to get into things like recommendation engines and all those kind of things. I think there's some really interesting dynamics there that people can get horribly wrong.
Agreed.
What did you have?
So mine is Citi, C-I-T-I, the bank, the consumer
Yes.
bank, the credit card, announced that it has something called a true, sorry, I'm going to make sure that I'm calling this the correct thing, true name feature on their cards. So basically they have announced that they're offering transgender and non-binary people the ability to use their chosen name on eligible credit cards. So they did it. It says this launch in conjunction with MasterCard provides eligible U.S. branded credit card customers with the option to use their self-identified chosen first name on credit cards. It's effective immediately. You can have existing card members request a new credit card, which displays their chosen names. And I'm reading from the Citigroup press release.
Right.
And it says, in the coming weeks, customers will also be able to be serviced by their chosen name when they call into customer service, and also across online and mobile access points, which, if you ask me, is the right thing to do. It is the human thing to do. And
Yes.
to be honest with you, when I read this, I was like a little shocked that you couldn't do it up until this
Yeah,
point.
why can't you just change your name anyway?
I don't know. Apparently it's a real issue with banking and things, because I think the question might be around.
So do you have to change your name like legally before you can?
Yeah, I think it might be like the legal documents have to match what's on
your bank.
the bank card, and credit card statement. And obviously, I mean, I think this is like I am not transgender, I'm not non-binary, but I can imagine that this is like a huge pain point, and it reminds me of Starbucks did a really great in the UK, and we'll link to it. Did a really great commercial around names on the cup, and this idea that I don't want to like summarize the commercial too closely because it's been a while since I've seen it, but basically this idea that like there's a lot to a name, and they put names on the cups, and you can put whatever name you want on the cup, and it sort of reminded me of that. But again, I was like a little shocked that like this isn't
always something you can do.
Yeah, it's not something you should do. But so it seemed like something that was good for a customer base. It's good for humanity. It's just a nice thing to do. Well, you did it. You've wasted another perfectly good half an hour or so with Rob and Jen and Simone and the Everybody Hates Your Brand podcast. Again, you can find us on everybodyhatesyourbrand.com and your podcast platform of choice. Have a week.
Take great care and be vigilant.